All right.
We're live.
We are. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us. I am your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co host, Marsilio Langella. And welcome to our week 4 preview. I know we'll give some people some time to filter in. We had some people waiting. Appreciate you guys, as always. Let us know in the chat who you are. If you have any questions for us, we'll get answering to them. Then we'll start diving into the game. So, what I wanted to do is start off talking about the standings. And I use Gabe Day 1 because they're one of the few sites that actually show the standings in Section 1, or I had to have made them. So that's what's propped out on the screen right now. We'll go through each just briefly. I do think there are some mistakes, though. I'm not exactly sure where they're getting some of these ranking, especially on these ties. Yeah, but we'll let it go there. We're also going to have a poll. Who you think is going to win in game picks this week? Looking back on last week, I think Mars, if I remember correctly, we had the same number of losses. So we go by losses because I pick one more game than you do. So we got a tie. Both had 9 losses last week. Yeah, so
real interesting.
That's a push this week. Obviously, I won the previous week, and our chat is very smart, so they'll choose the correct person. We didn't really give up a tie, so as an option, but we don't need to talk about ties. We want victories here, but welcome, guys. As always, appreciate you. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and sub if you haven't yet already. Let's start diving into it, though, as people are going to start filtering in. And if you miss anything, this is going to be posted to our show. To our channel. If you go to our channel on YouTube and you go under live, you can see our past live shows. So after this is posted, you miss anything, don't worry about it. You can always go back. All right, Mars. Now, I think you can see up on the screen. Let's start with AA. And really interesting, looking at AA. If you told me before the year started, there is, by the halfway point of the season, there would be one team that's undefeated in AA. I don't think most people would talk about the team that's there, right? Which is Scarsdale. If when you're doing your predictions, I don't think most people had Scarsdale as going to be halfway through the year would be undefeated. So just looking at that right away, it just shows you, again, that's why football is such a great sport. It gives you surprises, it gives you disappointments. But this, Scarsdale is legit. And we'll get into the games and talk about it. But Mars, here we got Scarsdale. We have Scarsdale up at the top, undefeated, followed by multiple teams. And this first column is win-loss versus the league. And then it's just 4 straight 2-1s, right? You have Mamaroneck, Arlington, Carmel, North Rockland. Suffern is 1-2. And then at the bottom, John Jay's Fitzgerald and New Rochelle, who don't have wins yet. Also, if you told me before the year those two teams wouldn't have a win going halfway into the season, you'd think, I think you're crazy, right? So, Mars, any quick thoughts? Most of these aren't. Scarsdale is a big surprise. Mamaroneck, to me, has kind of moved up into the upper echelon with that huge victory. They've had back-to-back wins, beating North Rockland, beating Carmel. To me, it makes Mamaroneck, and I'll just spoil for our Patreon members who already know my team rankings. Mamaroneck is my number 1 team heading into this week. But Arlington's won 2 straight, Mars. Any quick thoughts on this before we go to the other league in AA?
Yeah, obviously Scarsdale is the biggest surprise overall, but I think Mamaroneck, we kind of said, I think you kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the season that Mamaroneck was going to be one of your kind of highlight teams to look at. And I know this first game, it was a little rough.
Yes, they made me nervous right out of the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they ever since then, they've kind of bounced back. And same thing happened with Arlington. They had a really rough start, including their week 0 game, but they climbed back as well. And now it looks like A is really interesting. The team that really surprised me the most is Double A, sorry. League A, Double A, it
Yeah.
surprised me the most, or is the most tight. But the team that surprised me most is probably John Jay's Fishkill, mainly because, they last year they had a better year. They had a good showing against Carmel in the second half of that game,
Yeah.
and I think that they kind of give you and I said this last week. They're a team that their record I don't think really shows or represents them as a unit. I think they're way better than what the record's showing at the moment, but it's almost like
You are what your
all
record says
feelings.
you are.
Yeah, I mean, like feelings and emotions
Yeah.
are all fine and dandy unless you actually have receipts and data to prove it. So they have to kind of show out, or they're just going to be one of those teams left behind by the end of the season.
Yeah. And now when we move down to B, or Double A League B, and I just mentioned before the Power League, the playoffs work is they're going to get 6 teams. So, you got to get into the top 6 to get into the playoffs. The bottom league, you only get 2, right? So I mentioned that when we started this year. You can only get 2. And right now, sitting up at the top again, this is where I think they're just going by strictly wins right now, these rankings. But you have 3 teams with 2 wins in league, and that's Yonkers Forest, Mount Vernon, and Ossining. Now, Ossining has played 1 less league game than Mount Vernon and Yonkers Forest. They're 2-0 in league. And then you're followed up with Ketchum, who's 1-1. Then it's Yonkers Brave, who's 1-2. East Rampo, who's 1-1. And White Plains, who's 0-3 in league play. So I do think, obviously got to clean a little bit of things up, but these are where you could see all the teams and their records are. And then the second column is their win-loss overall record. And, before the year, there were 2 teams I said in one of my predictions to keep an eye on, Ossining and East Ramapo. So much football to be played. This one really is wide open. One's wide open to me. But, Ossining has shown, in my opinion, we'll get to game picks, they got to be one of the favorites. And you also have this week, which we'll talk about, Yonkers Forest versus Mount Vernon here at the top, Mars. So these games are getting very interesting, and they're going to be huge parts of kind of going forward who can make these playoffs. Quick thoughts on that, and then we'll go to A.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely going to be more, I guess you say, open, mainly because, like you said, I think it's more tighter because there's only, 2 spots that make it. But even just the 1 win, 1 loss can drastically change the way this entire Class AA League B looks like. So I feel like it's going to be really interesting as we get through the last weeks here.
Yep. All right, let's go to the other ones. We'll go there a little bit quicker. And again, when you get to A, we got 2 leagues. I think both of them are supposed to get into the top 4 for playoffs. And starting at League A, Somers sits at the top, 3-0 in league play. And then a bunch of 2-1s here. Yorktown 2-1, Brewster 2-1, Mapac 2-1, all in league play. And then the 0-2s. Now, the team hasn't been eliminated yet, right? You can see from the 2-1 to 0-2 is 1, right? It's 1 loss, a difference in 1 loss. So, but, in some of these teams, it's starting to get close to, they need to pull off an upset here. Fox Lane, John Jay Cross River, and Lakeland, right? Having opportunities. A bunch of them are playing in league play this week. So, huge opportunities here to get back into it. And there's also huge opportunities in League A to kind of establish yourself as, hey, these are going to be the top 4 this coming week, Mars.
Yeah, I feel like right now, when you look at the first top half of that league, and then the second half, it's like the tale of two ends of the spectrum. 2-1s are the minimum, and then 0-2s seem like the consistency. And you're right. I feel like it's gonna really depend on who can get an upset win, because I feel like wherever happens there's going to be an upset win against Mayapack or Brewster or Yorktown or even Somers. Like, that's going to be what signifies who can jump into that 4th spot. So it's still a lot more football to play.
Yeah, and then going on the bottom, and then look at these: Rye 2-0, Harrison 3-0, Eastchester 2-0. Right, so the big 3 right there in the League B, and then followed up with teams looking for their first win. Clarkstown South, which I'll talk about them as we get to their game, 0-2 in league play right now. Clarkstown North 0-2, Nyack 0-3. This gauntlet, this feels like a gauntlet in League B.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this, and you said the top 4 and that fourth spot is wide open. So, and it's anyone's game right there.
Yep, absolutely. Could come to that big rivalry game between South and North. How wild would that be?
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
All right, let's continue. And guys, welcome as always. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button. We're talking about the league standings, taking a quick look at them, going through each league, and then we're going to go into our game picks. So shout in any questions that you guys have. And yeah, we'll keep it going. B, again, don't want to take too much time because we got a bunch of the games to go in. There are a few teams that have off this week. But Mars, League B is doing the Pioneer system. So a lot of it weighs on who you played, who you beat, and preseason rankings. So, right now you're just going to be looking at, their overall record versus the league. There goes a lot more into B, if we're going to be honest. And you're just looking at, the real top here. And obviously the big name is Bronxville and Westlake. Both have been extremely impressive to start the year. And even the Brightcliff Hamilton Football Pro 2-0 in league play. So that one's a very interesting one to me. Yeah, Pearl River, Nanuet, Sleepy Hollow all have 2-1 records. Nyack with a 2-1 record, and then quite a few 1-2s. So again, this one's a little bit more iffy. I just want to show you all the teams lined up because they're going to use a Pioneer system, which now brings much more factors than your win-loss record. But Mars, anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I guess before the season even started, had criticized the Pioneer system because of, rankings and how much they play into the fact. And so it's going to be interesting how it plays out when we kind of get more of a clearer picture on where do these teams land based on strength and residual points and all that fun stuff.
Yep. All right, then we got the C and D, and then our Hudson Valley Football League, and then we're going to dive right into the game picks. So here we go on the C and D side. Again, to me, I'm looking at, Valhalla has been extremely impressive. So they're one of the biggest surprises. If you told me 3 big surprises to start the year, has been Scarsdale, Westlake, and Valhalla, who also had to replace a bunch of guys. There was a lot of uncertainty going into the season, but they have been a real dominant force. Dobbs Ferry has always been involved. They've always feel competitive in this league. And Putt Valley going in, I think, was the favorite. So, you're seeing them sit up at 2-0 in the league, followed by everybody else. But Mars, this is shaping up to be, those are the big 3 right now out of the C and D schools.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be the battle of those 3 who will kind of step away. And right now, Valhalla is that team that is, like you said before, is the biggest surprise. But I don't think people were really shocked that Dobbs Ferry and Putt Valley would be better teams in the C League. But Valhalla definitely took a step forward.
Yeah. And then finally, the Hudson Valley Football League. And again, guys, if you want to see this, go on GameDay1.com. I think there's a few mistakes, but something that can actually put the charts together is always nice. So then going into the Hudson Valley Football League, Tappan Zee, again, they both have 2 wins. Tappan Zee has defeated both Peekskill and Horace Greeley, so I imagine, they're getting the tiebreaker so far between those 2 teams. But Greeley is a very impressive team. Peekskill still hanging around there, and then followed up by everybody else. But Tappan Zee, to start off, it was interesting. Greeley was really hot coming into the game. Tappan Zee made a real big statement last week, Mars, and they've kind of established themselves as the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, that was it was a very surprising game. But Tappan Zee was they had the most energy out of that, and I feel like they kind of pulled away with that win. And now the question is going to be how the rest of the season plays out with these teams.
Absolutely. All right. Now, with that being said, let's go into the game picks, Mars. And, as always, give me 1 second while I pull up there. As always, we're going to go through all the games. We're going to stop for a couple that are kind of our, game of the week picks. Last week we started at AA. This week we're going to start with the Hudson Valley Football League and then go down. So let me pull up their schedule. All right, so the Hudson Valley Football League is also competing with, one of the games is a Hudson Valley Football League C crossover. The rest of the C teams, I think, have off this week. So kind of strange. It's like a whole league have a bye week outside of one. between the C and D teams. But let's dive into it, Mars. And let us know when we talk about it. The poll is up. Who you think is going to win this week between Frank and Mars on game picks? We had a push last week as a tie. Let us know in the chat who you think is going to win as we talk about the games. We'd love to hear everyone's opinion. Keep the bias at the door, if possible. But let's start with the first one, Mars. Peekskill 2-1 at Albertus Magnus, who is 1-1. Peekskill won 14-12 versus Portchester last week. They have won 2 straight. Albertus Magnus won 30-14 versus Poughkeepsie, which I think needs to be updated, yes, in the system because it's just showing 0-1 on game day 1. But it was the first win for Coach Ladini, so congratulations. Between these two teams, listen, Albertus Magnus I thought was pretty impressive last week. Won in dominant fashion. But I am going to go with Peekskill here. I mean, offensively, it has been very mixed. They like to run the ball, especially out of the spread. We know about Smythe, who's been a big player for me, but it's defense. I really like the way Peekskill's defense play. They're very aggressive. They force turnovers. They are number 2 out of the 7 teams in points allowed in the Hudson Valley Football League per game. They forced 2 turnovers last week, Mars, including a defensive touchdown. I'm going Peekskill.
I'm also going to go with Peekskill. I feel like they obviously have been on a roll. They had a good win against Portchester. Their defense has been very good. They forced 2 turnovers last week, and I feel like their defense is even scoring for them. They had a pick 6 last week as well, and I feel like that's going to be kind of their driving force for the rest of the year is their defensive play. I'm going to go with Peekskill.
Next up, we have Tappan Zee 3-1 at Walter Panis, who's 1-2. Tappan Zee coming off a very impressive victory, 38-13 versus Greeley. They have won 3 straight. As for Walter Panis, they lost a tough game against a rival, 28-13 versus Lakeland. They have lost 2 straight. When I look at this game, again, Walter Panis has showed that they can move the ball, Mars. This is the number 2 offense in points scored in the Hudson Valley Football League. With a quarterback Ramos leading the way, Generoso had 2 touchdowns last week. They were absolutely killed with turnovers in the red zone. They had 2 of them. That were devastating, took points off the board. The concern I have is, again, going up against this Tappan Zee defense, which is number 1 in the Hudson Valley Football League. They've had 2 touchdowns or less in 3 straight games, Mars. I am going to go with Tappan Zee here. They are on a roll offensively. They can hit up some big plays. They've scored 26-plus points in 3 straight. But it's this defense that's number 1 that forces turnovers and puts you behind the chains. I'm going Tappan Zee.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Tappan Zee. I feel like their defense has been phenomenal, and I kind of mentioned the same thing with Peekskill before, but their defense is what sets the stage for their offense, really to score points. They really stuff teams. They get turnovers. They get picks. They do it all, right? And I feel like because of that, their offense just keeps getting back on the field, and that's why they keep scoring points and winning these games. So I'm going to go with Tappan Zee.
This one's an interesting one for me, and that is the Hudson Valley Football League C crossover non-league game. So it's Portchester, who's 1-3, at Woodlands, who's 1-3. And Portchester, they lost 14-12 at Peekskill in a very close competitive game. They're trying to snap their 2-game losing streak. As for Woodlands, they lost 42-6 versus rival Dobbs Ferry, and they've lost 3 straight. So both teams trying to break the losing streak here. This one was a tough one for me because Portchester, they can run the football. They have a physical rush attack, option attack. And this feels like a game that they can control, keeping Woodlands' offense on the side. For Woodlands, they've only had 1 offensive touchdown the last 2 games, but I believe in this pass attack. Their quarterback in Campbell, who 2 INTs last week, is not good enough. They have to be a lot better this time around. At home, I am going to go with Woodlands. I know, it feels like Portchester could control this game running the football, but defensively, they've allowed a lot of points. And to me, I think this is the kind of game that the Woodlands offense can get back on track. And I think they win a close one here at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Portchester on this one, mainly because I feel like their biggest issue is that they had turnovers. And I feel like if they can limit those turnovers, Peekskill's defense is very good. If they limit the mistakes this week, I feel like they'll be able to control the time of possession. And I feel like Portchester is going to win it in a close game. I'm going to go Portchester.
All right, last one out of the Hudson Valley Football League. We have Horace Greeley, who's 3-1, at Poughkeepsie, who's 0-4. And, Greeley... they got beat up. There was no question. It was a surprise to both of us as we both picked Greeley, losing 38-13 at Tappan Zee. Poughkeepsie, they lost 30-14 at Albertus Magnus. And I look at this game, Greeley, they have the number 1 offense in the Hudson Valley Football League. Last week, turnovers hurt. Didn't give as many explosive plays as they normally do. And, you know, they just seemed a little off. And what was worse is I think defensively was even worse for them. They couldn't really stop guys. And this was a defense that was coming in that was pretty solid. I think they turn things around here. I think they come back, they regroup. They're up against the worst defense in the Hudson Valley Football League in points allowed. So expect to see some big plays by Osh, who had 2 touchdowns last week, both to Blakesley. Blakesley is hard to cover. I haven't seen teams really be able to cover him. Even last week, he scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's been an absolute lightning rod. I think they turn things around. The defense plays a much better game this week. I'm going to go with Greeley, Mars.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Greeley. I feel like last week was probably their worst game of the season, and they struggled on all ends on offense, and they had a lot of turnovers. They struggled just to be efficient, and I feel like they're going to kind of bounce back this week and kind of go back to their normal form. I'm going to go with Horace Greeley.
All right, that was the Hudson Valley Football League and C crossover. Let's go down now to B. And again, guys, don't worry about missing anything. Hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button if you haven't already. We're going to go through all the games. This game is going to get posted on our channel, so you can go back and rewind. So no worries there. All right, so let's head to B now, Mars. And first one up, a very interesting matchup. And that is Bronxville, who's 3-0 at Ardsley, who's 1-2. And when you look at, historically, Ardsley is 6-1-1 versus Bronxville, and they have a 5-game win streak in this matchup. The issue is this Bronxville team has been destroying teams. They won 33-0 at Byram Hills. Ardsley lost a heartbreaker 14-9 versus Pleasantville last week. So, when I look at Bronxville, they've outscored teams, Mars, 110-14 in 3 games. And these aren't against anybody. They beat Pleasantville. They beat Byram Hills, like I just mentioned last week. And who'd they play? Pelham.
Pelham.
Yeah, so, they've given teams some beatings in these first couple games. And this is the number 1 offense. They've scored 30-plus in each game. It all starts with the rush attack, with Patterson and Formato have combined for 14 touchdowns in 3 games. And again, those 2 guys are studs, but it's a lot of credit also to this offensive line. Led the way with McSherry. They bring in these big tight ends who can also push people around, pretty much extensions of this offensive line. And guys like Moore, they are big, they are physical, and they're also rocking the number 1 defense. They stop the run very well and get you behind the chains. And when I look at Ardsley, that's been the issue offensively. They've played 3 very strong defenses. Make no question, Westlake, Nanuet, and Pleasantville are strong defenses. It's not easy to move the ball consistently with them. It's the turnovers that have really hurt this offense. It starts with running the ball with Dulcine and then their young quarterback in Kaplan, but terrible turnovers that have been led to defensive touchdowns at times that have cost them games. Defensively, I think they've been relatively strong. There's the 8th defense out of 15 teams. They have to slow down the run, or this is going to get ugly very quickly if they get down. If they get down early and they have to become a passing team, I think it'll get ugly. I think it stays close for a while, but I am going to go with Bronxville. I think they're just playing at a very high level. Ardsley struggling with the turnovers on offense. I don't think they have enough defensively to stop them for 4 quarters. So I am going to go with Bronxville.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Bronxville. I feel like last week Ardsley has made a lot of mistakes that kind of cost them that game, and I feel like all season long they've kind of struggled to be as consistent as they could have been. And I feel like they're overall a strong team. I just think Bronxville right now is kind of hitting on all cylinders, and I just feel like Bronxville. This is just as much as the stats say that they have been winning. Ardsley's been beating Bronxville the last 5 years. I don't think necessarily. That doesn't mean really anything in this case because Bronxville is the hottest team right now and they have the most momentum on their side. I'm going to go with Bronxville.
Do they come in a little high? Riding high is a good question for me. And listen, this Ardsley defensive front 7 is tough. Speckman has been very disruptive. You have Fiore. Mars, they lost without giving up an offensive touchdown last week. So the defense played very strongly. It's the turnovers that are devastating. All right, next up, Mars, let's talk Byram Hills, 2-2 at Hen Hud, who's 2-2. Excuse me, I'm still dealing with the sniffles, but this is a league matchup. Very interesting one. Both teams 2-2. And last week, as in Byram Hills, they got shut out, beat up 33-0 versus Bronxville. Hen Hud won a shootout, 54-28 versus Irvington. This was another interesting one because Hen Hud offensively, they're tied for second in points scored in B out of the 15 schools. This is an offense that has shown the capability to make big plays, move the football, score points. They have 2 40-plus point games. And it's really led the way with 2 guys in Justin Parkes, who had 5 touchdowns last week, Mars, both running and receiving. And their quarterback, Abowd, who had 4 touchdowns, and he's a dual threat guy. So those 2 guys lead the way. I thought the offensive line played better for Hen Hud, so I am anticipating they're going to be able to move the ball versus Byram Hills. And Byram Hills' defense has been pretty solid. Can they prevent the big play? The question I have is defensively. Hen Hud defensively, they've allowed 28-plus points in 3 straight games. And I think you're going to see Byram Hills, who, they want to get Marscott the ball. We understand at the wide receiver spot. I think they're going to run the ball, and you're going to see other guys step up and make some plays against a defense that has given up a lot of big plays here. I'm going to go with Byram Hills to win on the road. This is, again, it's going to be, can Hen Hud's defense keep Byram Hills' offense, not creating big plays? We have not seen that frequently this year. If Byram Hills can protect the football and limit the possessions that Hen Hud gets, I think that's what occurs. I'm going to go with Byram Hills.
See, this was definitely a tough one for me, mainly because of the fact that the stats, when you look at them, you go, all right, well, Hen Hud clearly is on the top offenses in B based on stats alone. But you also have to take a look at who they've played so far. And, the stats kind of have to be weighted based on that, too. Byram Hills has played some really tough teams playing against Bronxville and others. And I'm also going to agree with you. I think Byram Hills is going to win in a close game. I think that their defense is going to play very well. Going to get their offense back on the field. And I think that, like you said before, time of possession is going to be the biggest thing. Like, whoever holds onto the ball the longest is going to be able to kind of control the game. I think Byram Hills' goal should be to make the drives the longest possible and just run the ball as much as humanly possible, just to run out the clock. You don't want to give Hen Hud opportunity because if they can, then they'll score at will at times. So I'm going to go Byram Hills.
Welcome, Cole. Again, we'll get to Westlake, and I think that's the next game after this one. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We're not really doubters, if you missed the first part of the show. But let's continue. We'll get to Westlake. I know there's some crow people want us to eat. But let's start with this one first before we get to that. And that is another very interesting game. Pelham 2-2 at Pleasantville, who's 1-2. And, last week, Pelham lost 26-7 versus Nanuet. Pleasantville won 14-9 at Ardsley. And to me, this is a game where both teams are still figuring themselves out offensively. When you look at Pelham, back-to-back games, they've scored 7 points. They've struggled offensively. Negative plays have been killer for them. And I know they're going to want to run the ball. You're going to see a mix of some condensed formations and some spread stuff. I think trying to attack Pleasantville off the edge and then take some deep shots down the field because they do have one of the best wide receivers in Romano, who is tough to play man-to-man with. So, Hirsch has had a rushing touchdown. He's had some big plays for them. Romano is a big play threat down the field. But they've allowed too many negative plays. And when I go to the other side for Pleasantville, they won last week, did not score an offensive touchdown. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown in 2 games. So, you don't apologize for victories, right? You get a win, you earn the win as a team. They made huge plays at special teams with a block punt. They had a punt pass. That was a big, gave them big yards. Kickoffs, punts, they were pinning teams back on the opposite end of the field. Special teams was very strong for them. And defensively, it was very strong. But offensively, again, I said this a couple weeks ago, the quarterback spot, it's a work in progress. Doing some quick stuff, tacking down the field on occasional, but they got to get into a rhythm. I'm looking at the offensive line in the running game. I know you're going to see stacked boxes here. Mars, they averaged 3.2 yards a carry last week. And they played a tough front, but B has a lot of tough fronts. So this offensive line, to me, if they want to win the game and get the offense back on the line, has to take the onus on their shoulders. And these backs in Sadao and Hudzinski and Sokic and whoever runs the football, again, needs to run downhill and churn up those yards. So I'm thinking looking at 2 offenses trying to figure things out, but 2 defenses that have played relatively strong. And I think the stronger unit is Pleasantville. they were really strong. They had one, long touchdown run. But outside of that, they made a lot of plays. And Sadal, McPhee, Fucillo, Feeney, Reish. The big thing is they can prevent the long pass play to Romano. I think they're going to give Pelham issues running the football, which gives them an advantage, maybe force a turnover or two. I'm going to go with Pleasantville. At home, they are 0-2 at home, Mars. I don't remember the last time they went 0-3 at home. I think it's been a long time. I don't think that breaks this time around. I'm going Pleasantville, Mars. I know you're not picking the game. Give me the thoughts on both teams. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously both these teams have ability and they both have aggressiveness on the defensive side of the ball, and they both struggling right now on offense. And I feel like that's, like you said before, it's about finding your identity and sticking with it. And for Pelham, it's like they have to try to really rely on their big playmakers. And Romano is a guy that is a playmaker for sure and can make a lot of big plays for you. So from that side, rely on your stars. From Pleasantville, it's like you do have a lot of skill players that are talented, and it's really going to depend on the efficiency from the quarterback position and the offensive line that really can drive the game going forward. So I feel like yes, the offense have struggled, but I feel like it really is going to have to be a full team effort, right? And I feel like that's always been the mantra that a lot of people have been saying all season long, is the Nober card. What does that mean for the offense? I feel like it's got to be almost like a pride moment where it's like, hey, we are our own team now. This is our season. You have to kind of treat it that way. And it's going to be the question of who's going to step up, especially on the offensive line, who's going to step up and really try to bully some teams around. I feel like that's going to be the big question that I look into when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, both teams have been strong, right? So I feel like whichever offense is going to be more efficient is going to be the one that wins.
Yeah, I mean, that one's to me. For Pelham, I think they have better big play ability than Pleasantville. I think Pleasantville's run game can be more consistent. Now, if they're going to average 3.2 yards, I think they could lose this game. They have to run the ball with more efficiency because I do think Pelham has better big play ability than Pleasantville currently. Let's get to the next game. And Cole, I see your question about John Carlatone, the nose guard of Westlake. Again, I just go by the number. So I've seen Westlake's defensive front seven, and now we'll talk about it. So I'll answer that question as we talk about this game. And that is Edgemont 0-3 at Westlake, who's 3-0. And Edgemont lost 22-0 at Rhinebeck. Westlake won 33-21 at Pearl River, which proved both of us wrong. Westlake going on the road, I thought was going to be a tough feat, but they did it. And here's what I'll just talk about Edgemont real quickly. Defensively, I think they've been the better unit out of the two. They create a lot of pressure. They're 11 out of 15, I think, in points allowed. It's offensively that is the big concern for Edgemont. They've scored 6 points total the last two games, and turnovers have been a huge issue. Now you're playing a Westlake team that is 3-0, and defensively in the front seven, including their nose guard, number 41, defensively in the front seven, they make it tough to run the ball, especially horizontally. If you try to go east and west versus Westlake, they rally to the ball. They swarm to the ball. The defensive front can move. They're not small, right? So it's not easy to push them around. But what impressed me the most is their ability to move. They have linebackers who can run. They have defensive backs, obviously, who can run. And they're defensive linemen who can move and rally to the ball. They're not just walls. They're not just mountains. These are guys that can get penetration. These are guys who can run east and west. And they do a really good job of getting into their lanes and their gaps and preventing big plays, especially to the outside. And so, that's, kind of answering, when you mentioned the nose guard, when you mentioned, again, your eagle tackles, your defensive ends, as a unit, they play very strong. They don't have, guys, superstars. I think in that front seven, they have a lot of good players, right? They don't have superstars, but what they do is they play very well together. And that's what I've been so impressed with Westlake. And yes, did they give up a big rush touchdown last week? Did they give up some big plays last week? Yes, but Pearl River has a lot of talented athletes. So that's not surprising to me. But overall, they play very good. They're fourth in defense and points allowed per game. And they swarm to the football. And then we go to the other side, offensively. This is the number 2, tied for second in points scored. They've averaged over 200 yards rushing the last 2 weeks. They've had 6 different players score in the last 2 weeks, Mars. So, again, it's a lot of credit to the offensive line and guys like Mealy and Negrelli. And the running backs, they have multiple guys who can make plays, but 2 have stood out to me in DiNapoli, who has been a big play guy for them, both rushing and receiving. He has kind of been again, they have a cast of guys, but 1A to me. And their quarterback in Legeza, who they don't ask him to throw a lot, especially when they're running the ball very well. This is a quarterback who can run. This is a quarterback who can throw, and he's been a really good orchestrator, which was the biggest question mark for Westlake coming in offensively, and he has stepped up to that. I gave a long spiel on Westlake, Mars. I ate some crow there. I'm going to go with Westlake. They are home versus an offense that is struggling and turning the ball over. To me, I think this defense causes a bunch of turnovers in this one. They run the football. They're going to win this game.
I'm also going to go Westlake. I feel like their team speed has been very good, right? And you mentioned before they rally to the ball, they swarm, and I feel like that's the dangerous type of defense is out there when you have more than just one guy hitting a ball carrier, right? Because now it comes from all different directions, right? And I feel like Pearl River struggled with that, and as much as there was big plays that were given up on the defensive side for Westlake, but at the same time, their offense is just as lethal, right? They have a lot of different players that can score points. Their offensive line was kind of bullying people out there, and I feel like that was kind of what that mentality has been so far. It's just been swarming defense, speed, and efficiency on offense, and I feel like that has been what their mantra has been so far. Now, the question of can they continue that going forward? We'll still yet to see. I think this week they will win, but it's kind of like the idea of like, well, now Westlake is not under the radar, right? And it's a commodity. It's known that Westlake is a team to beat, right, in B. And so with that comes with a target on your back, right? So it's going to be whether or not they will continue doing that all the way through the rest of the season into the playoffs or not, right? And that's going to be the big question. I say the same thing about Bronxville, right? The Bronxville, I think me and you both said that Bronxville has a lot of returning guys. I have a feeling that's going to happen. Westlake was not expected to be high powered, right? But they are now. So the question of you're not hidden. Everyone knows that they're playing well. So how they react to that, we're going to see how the rest of the season goes. But I think Westlake's going to win this game.
Let's go to the next one. We have Croton Harmon 0-3 at Irvington, who's 1-2. Croton Harmon lost 27-6 versus Sleepy Hollow. Irvington lost 54-28 at Hen Hud. So for me, Mars, when I look at this game, Irvington defensively, obviously they gave up way too many big plays. They had an INT touchdown last week, but way too many big plays on the defense. Offensively, we've seen that they can move the ball. They're 8 out of 15 in points scored. They can run the ball with Jarrett. They have quarterback Callahan, but they had 4 turnovers last week. Listen, Irvington is back home. Defensively gave up too many big plays. Offensively turning the ball over. I think they cleaned things up. I think this is a nice bounce-back win for them. I think they're going to beat Croton Harmon. Croton Harmon, they had some success on offense, which was nice to see. Defensively, they've allowed 27-plus points in all 3 games. I think Irvington takes advantage, and they win this game.
I'm also going to go with Irvington. I feel like Irvington has more talent, I think, on the offensive side. I feel like defense had some struggles, but they definitely had a good showing with a pick 6 last week, which was great. But it's just they have to be more efficient. I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing. But I'm going to go with Irvington here.
So I see, again, keep disrespecting. What other praise you want me to give, Mike? What other praise you want me to give?
I think it's more on the idea of we didn't call that they're going to win the section title in week 5. That's true. Yeah, we're hating.
Oh, so it is. Yeah, I mean, we just ate crow, man. We just ate crow. What else do you want from us?
Okay. I picked them to win this week. I don't know what else you want me to say. I mean, I even said that they were under the radar, and now they're not.
Hey, have you seen my rankings? I got Westlake number 2 in B right now.
I don't know what else to say.
They absolutely do have some dogs, though, Cole. That I agree with. Let's go to the next one, Mars. And before we get to the game of the week, let's talk about Rhinebeck 2-2 at the Briarcliff Hamilton football program, who's 2-2. This one's another interesting one for me. Rhinebeck won 22-0 versus Edgemont. The Briarcliff Hamilton football program lost 47-10 versus Valhalla. Now, again, Valhalla has been one of those surprise teams as well this year. But when I look at this game, This one was a tough one for me to pick. Again, Rhinebeck defensively, they're 5th in B in points allowed per game. They had a block punt last week, Mars. They've had 2 shutouts, but they've also had 2 games where they've given up 20-plus points. And, which Rhinebeck is going to show up is kind of the big one. And for the Briarcliff Hamilton football program, we know offensively that they can move the ball. I mean, 3 out of the 4 games, they've scored 21-plus points. They have a balanced attack in the air and on the ground. Defensively, they've allowed 2 games of 14 or less. But last week, they gave up 500 yards. And so this one was so hard because I also look kind of at the splits at their home and away. Whereas Rhinebeck is 2-0 at home, 0-2 away. Briarcliff Hamilton is 0-2 at home, 2-0 away. So which team is going to break this trend is the big thing. I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go with Briarcliff Hamilton football program. At home, which is never easy to do, Rhinebeck definitely plays better at home versus on the road, and I think that comes to bite them this time around. I'm going to go with Briarcliff.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my boys from Rhinebeck. I think that
well, what a surprise.
I'm not gonna leave their side at this moment. I feel like this is actually gonna be a really interesting game overall, though. I feel like both teams are kind of vying for that win so that they can kind of get themselves back in that momentum swing again. Because I know the Rhinebeck had a good win against Edgemont, but I feel like their defense has been very solid, and I think special teams has been great for them. And I feel like that is kind of an aspect of the game that's kind of been looked past at times, and I feel like Rhinebeck is going to have that advantage. I know they're going to go into Briarcliff to kind of play, and that's a tough thing to do. But I feel like Rhinebeck's momentum is on their side, and I feel like as a unit, they're going to pull off the win here. I'm going to go with Rhinebeck.
Yeah. We shall see. Rhinebeck Nation, Mars never lets you down. Don't let him down this week.
Don't let me down.
All right, Mars, let's go to the game of the week for B. And obviously this one is a big one for anyone who knows about it. And that is Nanuet, who's 2-1, at Pearl River, who's 3-1 in the Little Brown Jug game. Big time rivalry between the two. They played each other 22 times since 2004, where Nanuet has really dominated historically this rivalry. They're 18-4 versus Pearl River, but Pearl River won a great game last year, overtime victory, 20-17. And so let's start with the away team in Nanuet, then we'll go to Pearl River, and then I do want to show a little bit of film. And, Nanuet won 26-7 at Pelham. And to me, it was a bit of a surprise. Pearl River lost, 33-21 versus Westlake, like we mentioned before. And Nanuet offensively, this offense, the last couple of games, has really picked things up, Mars. They're actually number 5. They're 5th in B in points scored, and it starts with the run game. You're going to see a lot of I formation. You're going to see a lot of wing T, bringing out the tight end, bringing out the we. They'll come out in a T formation or have 2 wings. And to me, it all starts with their running back in Duffy. He is key to this offense. He had 4 touchdowns the last 2 games, but they also love to run to him because he's a good blocker, right? He could be a good lead blocker. He is fast. He's explosive and a really important two-way player. Moran is kind of the downhill fullback that they use out of the wing T offense. He had 116 yards last week. But their quarterback, even in Peterson, who everyone, over the last few years, it was like, what can they get out of the quarterback spot? He's been pretty solid. 3 touchdowns the last 2 games, and we've seen guys like Flowers and Benton make plays in this passing offense. My big key for them offensively, they want to run the ball, and they're going to have to test Pearl River because Pearl River gave up 7 yards a carry last week to Westlake. And, they got run down. And so Nanuet is going to say, well, we're going to run downhill and see if they can stop you. So that's obviously the number one. I think they want to try to attack the edge as well. Get these condensed formations that we've seen from Nanuet and get Vin Duffy out in space because he's fast and explosive. And, that's the key thing. Defensively, this is the number 3 defense, Mars, in B so far. 2 games they've allowed only 7 points. And they've done a good job, and you saw that last week, if you watched them against Pelham, of generating negative plays. Guys like Duffy, Moran, Estefan, Diffley, a bunch of guys who can make plays, and that's going to be the big thing. Westlake, they want to run the football, get them into 2nd and long, get them into 3rd and long, And then that's when you guys can start generating pressures on these quarterbacks and see where that leads you. But another thing that they can do, Mars, like I mentioned, offense, if you're running the football, you're keeping Pearl River's offense on the sideline. And so that's going to be key for them. Mars, thoughts on Nanuet?
Yeah, I feel like they're obviously they've had some good showings, and I feel like defensively they've been very impressive. And I mean, Nanuet is their offensive scheme hasn't really changed for many years, and I feel like it's been one of the more efficient things they've done. That they just try to overload sides and they just try to run downhill and try to get to the edges in these very like end over formations, just heavy set formations, and it works. And I feel like what the benefit for that is that they really do control the time possession. And I feel like you said before, to try to prevent Pearl River from really getting their offense back on the field, it's about controlling the time, right? And I feel like that's what Nanuet's going to try to do in this game.
Yeah, and let's move to Pearl River. And again, I mentioned, losing to Westlake last week, this interesting stat to me is that Pearl River has not won 2 straight versus Nanuet since 2010, 2011. So it would be history if they win this time around. It hasn't happened in a long time, over 14 years now. And offensively, we know that they're strong. This is the 4th ranked offense in points scored. They've scored 21 plus points in 3 out of 4 games. And it's another offense that, it's run first, and then they're mixing in the play action game where they can take deep shots down the field. But they also like to go into the spread stuff. And if you're playing off, they'll work the quick game. But it starts with their running back in Amundsen. He averages over 100 yards a game. He scored in each game this year. Shows very good balance. He can make defenders miss. They also run that 2 quarterback system with Whalen, but he was out last week, right? So, Whalen and Lanise, they bring different dynamics to this offense. When one of them gone, it definitely changes the offense a little bit, right? Because Lanise is definitely a downfield thrower. And you saw, last week, Westlake challenged some of these receivers and tried to take away some of the quick stuff. So, interested to see maybe Nanuet tries a similar pattern against this offense, especially if one of the quarterbacks in Whalen is not playing. But defensively, last week was not a good performance against the run. I mentioned it earlier. You gave up 7 yards a carry. Was it 270 yards rushing? They have to be better. And I think this defense can be better. Guys like Riley, Davin, Guzman, Graziano, they're going to be extremely important this week trying to stop Duffy and Moran running the football. So those are going to be the huge, things for me. The keys offensively, you're going to see a bunch of loaded boxes. For Pearl River, I like the way, again, they like to condense things and then give some of the misdirection where you'll have a fullback go one way, you'll have linemen pull the other, and their tailback likes to attack the center and then bend to the proper gap. Right? They're trying to mess with the linebackers where he's not running to a hole directly. He's trying to get them to step forward and then bend and then have those linemen cut them off, those linebackers. So that's something I know that they're going to do, but also throwing out of those condensed formations. Right, taking shots down the field when you get those loaded box, you'll get some man-to-man opportunities, and maybe you can throw the ball to guys like Graziano and Lee and Carlacci. Right, so that's for me defensively have to be better against the run, especially out on the edges. Right, I think you're going to see Nanuet try to attack that. You're going to see them try to attack downhill. They have to be better defensively running the football. Thoughts on Pearl River, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like Pearl River offensively has been very efficient, and their defense has been tough. But the big focus I'm going to have in this game is Nanuet's defense against Pearl River's offense, mainly because obviously as Lanise is going to have to really take more of the load here, and the question is going to be about like how they want to really attack this Nanuet defense, and whether it's maybe they change it up and go more passing rather than try to like set up that run first and maybe do short yardage attacks against this man defense. I mean, that's going to be the big question I have. I feel like this offense has been very good, but now you're playing a really tough defense in a rivalry game. It's just going to get more elevated.
Yeah. All right, let's do a little film. And let me show. And again, I'm just seeing some of them. Cole, I appreciate it. Appreciate you calling me the GOAT. I definitely am compared to Mars. So we'll see. That's where the best coverage is, though, Cole, right? And I know, what, Pearl River get 3 straight game of the weeks. It's about matchups. It's about matchups. It's not just about one team, right? They've had the 3 matchups. All right, let's go into it. Mars, can you see on my screen?
Yeah.
We all good? Yep, looks like it.
Yep.
And for the film, guys, I wanted to take a look at both, offenses and really both rush attacks. And the first one is Nanuet. And those who might not be familiar with Nanuet, what I've seen so far this year is a lot of wing T stuff, a lot of I stuff. And this is the wing T formation. You got a tight end wing to the left. And I want to focus in on this guy right here, Duffy, who he's so important for this offense, both getting the football, had multiple touchdowns last week, but also as a blocker. They like to run to him because he's pretty strong at it. And so they got tight end wing left. You have Vin Duffy to the right. And so he's on the weak side, and they're going to run to him, And if you look defensively, this is a five-man front. I mean, Pelham knows, hey, the odds of them running are pretty high. They got 5 guys up on the line, 2 linebackers. They got 7 there in the box with a couple of these DBs playing close. But Nanuet's going to run against it anyway. And if you can execute your blocks well, you could still have success. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to run a belly, right? And Vin is going to be the lead blocker here. So you got man-on-man blocking. This tackle's going to try to kick out this end, and Duffy's going to go in between. And as you watch this play, really good job by the O-line, really good job by the running backs, getting on their proper guys. Look at them explode off the ball here, and there's the seals right there. Nice block by Duffy, and then Moran, who's a strong back. He could run downhill, and you're going to see that. He hits the hole hard, runs through the arm tackle, look at him get to the second level, and just bulldoze dudes. And because of what Pearl River struggled last week, stopping the run, you're going to see a whole lot of that. But what they're also going to do is get Duffy the ball, right? They want to get him out on the edge. He's fast. He's explosive. Here we go again. Tight end wing to the right. Duffy's now on the right. They got the slot to the left. And instead of running downhill, running belly, they're going to give kind of some belly movement, but they're going to hand it off on a sweep towards the split end side. And that's what you're going to see right here. So they want to fake to the defense. Hey, they're going to run it. But again, a lot of focus needs to be on Duffy. If he's not on the side of the blocking, chances are they're going to try to go to him, right? And here's an example right here. Look at him fake out there, but look at the defense closing down because, hey, they're running downhill on us. So we're trying to squeeze it down, hand it off to the outside. Look at that corner moving in, and it opens things up. And then watch him just explode. It looks so easy. I'm anticipating to see Nanuet do that quite a bit until Pearl River can prove that they can stop that. But then I go into Pearl River. And yes, they lost last week. They did have some good things that you saw. And they want to run the ball. And so here they are. They got a tight end to the right, 2 backs. This back is motioning towards the tight end. And again, you see a 5-man front, right? They got 5 guys up front, 2 linebackers, a lot of guys near the box, right? They're trying to stop the run. But Pearl River shows that they can run the ball even against some of these stacked boxes. And you're going to see, I mentioned it in the preview. They're going to have this fullback blocked towards the sides of these 2 pulling guys. You have the pulling guard and a tight end that's pulling backside and a bunch of down blocks. They want to get movement at the point of attack, and then these guys coming across. And the running back, as you're going to see, attacks the center first and then bends it because they're trying to get these linebackers to step forward instead of the direction of the play. And you can see both linebackers stepping forward, right? They're shadowing the running back, right? Now this linebacker, he's probably seeing these guys pull. He's trying to head this way, but this play side backer, he's stepping forward because the back is stepping forward. But now he's going to bend it, and now it puts the leverage in favorable position for Pearl River. So you get really nice push here. Amundsen hits the hole hard. He gets that second level. He's tough to stop. And you can see that. Just explodes, tough to tackle him in open field, leads to a long touchdown. Let's go to another game. So again, we saw a 5-man front. Now we don't get the motion here. We get 2 backs towards the tight end. This time we get 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. So still 7 men in the box. But you're going to see the same exact play. Fullback's going to kick out towards the pulling tight end. Running back is going to attack forward and then bend it. You see both these guys pulling. But I want to see this offensive line try to dominate this week. We've seen some real strong moments by them, but look at the push here. Really good push, man on man right here, and Amundsen gets to the outside. Once he gets to that second level, he's tough to stop. And there he goes off to the race again. He is tough for DBs to bring down. Leads to a long touchdown. Again, both rush offenses. I'm expecting to see condensed formations. both expecting them to try to run the football. It's going to be very interesting. Mars, who do you got winning and why?
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely a tough one. I mean, it's a rivalry game. The Little Brown Jug game is infamous in that entire area, and they're basically going to be bragging about this for forever, right? And obviously, Nanuet has had Pearl River's number in the overall rivalry game, 18-4, right? And what's interesting is that last year, Pearl River had that really close win, like you said, in overtime. And I feel like this is going to be an interesting game, mainly because of the fact that Nanuet's defense is stout, and Pearl River is known for scoring high levels of points no matter what team. And even against Westlake, with a good defense, they did score at least 21 points, right? And that is still something. And I feel like with that being said, I'm going to go with Pearl River, and I feel like them playing at home, and on top of the fact that I feel like they're going to try to diversify the type of offense they're going to be running against Nanuet, because Nanuet's going to, like you said before, stack the box. As much as Pearl River wants to run the ball, and I think they still can, I just feel like they're going to try to mix it up a little bit. I feel like they have more of a capability of doing that. I feel like for Nanuet, it's going to be more narrow in its focus for the offense, and they're going to try to really control the time of possession. But I feel like Pearl River is just such a big playability that they could score on whim at times, and I feel like that's going to give them the edge here. I'm going to go Pearl River.
It is a very tough game, and Jesus just made a real interesting comment. Amundsen was a Nanuet kid until last year, so very, very interesting matchup. With everything we talked about, I agree with you, Mars. I'm actually going to go with Pearl River as well. At home, listen, they haven't won back-to-back games, so history is not with us for over 14 years in this rivalry. But I do think they make enough plays offensively. And if they can get ahead of Nanuet and force Nanuet to become a passing team, that's not what Nanuet, even though I like the way Peterson's played, they want to run the football, control the game, and attack ahead of the chain. But if Pearl River can get ahead, I think that's when they're in a favorable matchup. I think they do, and I think Pearl River wins the game. All right. So I hope you guys enjoy some of our little film sessions. A lot of work goes into it, so I hope that it's worth it for you guys. But now let's move to A. And, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Hit that sub button if you haven't yet already. We've talked about B just most recently. Anything missed, guys, you guys can go back to the show. Make sure you hit up that poll on who you think is going to win in game picks this week. And when we're picking these games, let us know who you think is going to win. I love that some of the interactions we're getting in chat. I really do appreciate you guys getting involved. And shoot any questions you guys want, and we'll address them at that time. But let's keep going, Mars. First one up is Yorktown 3-1 at Fox Lane, who is 1-2. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything, right? Yeah, that's the correct one. That's the one up on my list. Yorktown won 49-14 versus John Jay Cross River. Fox Lane lost 49-12 at Somers. And when I look at this game, Fox Lane defensively, it was a struggle. No question. They allowed over 400 yards last week. Way too many open guys in the passing game. And Yorktown, with Caden Gonzalez, who has 7 touchdowns in the last 2 games, is going to try to take advantage of that. I mean, they have scored 35-plus points the last 2 games. They had 500 yards of offense last week. Look for them to attack the secondary and make sure they have shored things up communication-wise. Galante is a guy that not a lot of people talk about, who is becoming a more and more dynamic receiver as the season goes along, one of the best in the class. But he's not alone. You have McEnroe, you have Moritz. These guys who can make big plays. But to me, defensively, Mars, this Yorktown defense is tied for 3rd in points allowed. They can generate a lot of pressure. If Yorktown can get ahead, and this front 7 can get after the quarterback, they can lead to some turnovers. I like the way Cernick played last week, even though they were down quite a bit for Fox Lane. But I'm going to go with Yorktown. I think they have too much firepower. Fox Lane defense at times has really struggled. And defensively, they're going to give Fox Lane's offensive line, it's going to be a fight for them. And I think Yorktown's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Yorktown. I feel like I agree with you. Other than Somers and Rye, Yorktown to me is the next best team in A, and I feel like Yorktown's defense has been top notch, and their offense has just been fantastic, and it's kind of interesting to see how both scores were almost identical, with Yorktown winning 49-14 while Somers had beaten Fox Lane 49-12. And it kind of feels like that's like the next team in my list on this side of A, Somers and then Yorktown, and they had that battle early in the season.
Yes.
And I just feel like that that Yorktown has just so much firepower, as you mentioned earlier. And in Fox Lane, as much as they've kind of gotten a lot better on the offensive side, their defense has struggled. And I feel like with that being said, Yorktown's got too many weapons. They're going to score a lot of points. I just don't think Fox Lane is going to have a lot of time to make that up. I'm going to Yorktown.
Let's go to the next one. This is an AA crossover, so non-league game. We have White Plains, who's 0-3 at Clarkstown North, who is 1-3. And White Plains lost 42-14 versus Mount Vernon. Clarkstown North lost 7-0 versus Harrison in a close game throughout that entire one. And, when I look at this, White Plains offensively have shown that they can move the ball. Right? They're 8th in points out of the AA teams in points per game. And you show that, they can move up and down the field. They can score some points, but turnovers have been a killer. They had 3 turnovers last week. And when you look at Clarkstown North, this offense, even though they got shut out, they played a very good Harrison defense, and they moved the ball, but they couldn't finish drives. And still, even with it getting shut out, Mars, 5th in points scored in A, right? So to me, I'm going to go with Clarkstown North. This offense is up against the 15th ranked defense in White Plains out of AA. They've given up 30-plus points in all 3 games. Last week, gave up over 260 yards rushing. That is right in Clarkstown North's wheelhouse. I think they run the ball enough. This defense, if they can play with the similar intensity that they did versus Harrison, I think Clarkstown North wins this game, and I think they will win this game.
I'm also going to go with Clarkstown North. And I agree with you. I feel like Clarkstown North, even though the record's 1-3, they're a way better team, and they played really tough against Harrison. And I feel like their best ability is to run the ball. And unfortunately, White Plains defense has been really struggling, and especially struggling against stopping the run really does not help in this situation. I'm going to go with Clarkstown North. Let's
talk about another very interesting matchup. This is Clarkstown South 2-2 at Rye, who is 4-0. And when you look at Clarkstown South, they lost 20-3 at Eastchester. Rye won 39-13 at Nyack. And Mars, I don't know who at Clarkstown South pissed off the Section 1 gods, but this is their 4th straight road game. I mean, they have been in an absolute brutal schedule in traveling. And now it caps it off going to Rye. So this has been I don't know where the schedule makers have against Clarkstown South, but it has been a tough stretch for them. And offensively, you have really seen it. They have not scored an offensive touchdown in 2 games. They've had multiple injuries to starters. I get it, but you know what? This is football, right? So I know you're missing multiple starters. 2 weeks ago, they had 4 turnovers, Mars. Last week, they gave up 4 sacks and had less than 200 yards. The offense just feels discombobulated. At times, they can move the ball, and then they have a turnover. And then at times, they can never be on the same page. And they need to control the ball against this high-powered Rye offense. They got to keep them on the sideline if they're going to have any chance here. With their quarterback in Ryan, Reddy, Van Etten, who have made some big plays, this offensive line is in for an absolute battle. And we've seen guys like Tito make some big plays in the passing game. Defensively, Clarkstown South's been pretty solid, Mars. They're 5th in A in points allowed. They've been a pretty strong unit. Guys like Sparing, Rosario, Tito, we've all made plays last week. For them to have a chance of the upset, the offense has to control the football and look for special teams to be a big one. Juan Garcia has been really solid for them kicking, but looking at Rye, number 1 offense in A, Mars. They have scored 30-plus points in 4 games. Quarterback Carson Boomiller completed 75% of his passes and has 14 total touchdowns so far this year. 6 different Rye players have scored over the last 2 games. I'm going to go with Rye. They have way too much, and Clarkstown South's offense has been struggling. Listen, we know about Kesner, Giuliano, who have been tremendous. They're household names for obvious reasons. But guys like Fenton and Ramachandran are adding to an arsenal that is already strong. And these are guys that have really exploded on the scene the last couple of weeks. Defensively, they have 2 straight games allowing less than 14 points. This defense has 4 INTs this year. I think that goes up. Guys like Brady, Kesner, Sass, Gillies, Wilmarth. There is a lot of guys who have made plays for this unit. I'm going to go with Rye. I think it continues. They are at home.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Rye. I mean, Boo Miller's having better numbers than Aaron Rodgers right now, and I feel like that's kind of something that is kind of crazy to hear from a high school quarterback, 75% completion, 14 total touchdowns. I don't think he's due a pick yet all season
He
so
has.
far.
He has two.
Oh,
He
yeah,
has
there's
two.
two of
So
them.
he's not been completely
His
clean.
QBR is not 150 at least.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, I guess you could say that's the issue. But offensively, they've been unbeatable, right? They've been unstoppable, and I feel like they, to me, if Somers and Rye, the top two teams easily, based on just overall play. Rye feels like they are not doing anything wrong. There hasn't been any problems. They haven't really been tested. I feel like they haven't really had that moment where
this is the best defense they're going to play since week 0.
Yeah, so I feel like this is going to be a good tester to see how his offense plays against a good defense. I just think Rye is too much, and I agree with you. Clarkson South has been put through the ringer, right? And just going away games for 4 straight times. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think Rye has just been playing so damn well this year, and I feel like they're going to win this game.
Next up, this is a non-league matchup, crossover. Nyack 0-4 at Brewster, who's 2-2, and Nyack lost 39-13 versus Rye. Brewster lost 14-13 in heartbreaking fashion at Mayapack. And I got to tell you, this is an interesting one because this is on my upset alert list, Mars. Now I'll let you know my pick in a second, but the reason is because Nyack, they're not as bad as their record says they were. Now last week they played Rye, they were down 26. So, things weren't pretty, but they battled Eastchester. They battled Harrison for a long period of time. This is a team that has weapons. So, if they can, to me, this is the first team to 14 wins. And so if Nyack can generate some big plays, whether it's Claremont, who had 2 touchdowns last week running the football, or their quarterback Williams making some big throws to some of these receivers, if they can, score some points, because this offense is last in A, because their drives have been killed by turnovers and penalties. Defensively, they've been better. They obviously have to stop the run. Is going to be huge, which they've given up big yardage with. And when I look at Brewster, similar things. Offensively, it's been hit or miss. They looked really strong at times last week versus Mayapack in the first half. They hit some big pass plays. They ran the ball, churned up some yardage. And then in the second half, they had 64 total yards. They could barely move it. And they had 1 drive towards the end of the game, which ended up short. So, to me, it's which offense are we really going to see separate itself this time? But good news for Brewster, they got the number 1 defense, Mars, in points allowed in A. And they have 2 shutouts, this year. Last week against Mayapack, they played a strong game outside of 2 plays, 2 long touchdown passes. And I talked about in my review on things that drove me crazy. But because of that, if this was at Nyack, I think I would go with Nyack, but it is not. It is at Brewster. And I think Brewster's defense is going to make things hard for Nyack, and they'll do just enough on offense. First one to 14 wins, and I think Brewster gets 14, Mars. I'm going Brewster.
Yeah, you see, I feel like Brewster is going to win this game mainly because I feel like their size is bigger, and I feel like they have more of an ability to run the ball, and I guess more efficiency on their defense has just been very good all year long. And I feel like it's going to be a close game. I don't think Nyack is a bad team, and I agree with you that their 0-4 record does not dictate how good of a team they are, because they actually have been playing tough all year long, and it's really just been the lack of discipline and just make. I'm just saying against Nyack they've struggled, right? I'm saying that they've made mistakes, that they've struggled against Rye and they struggled against previous games throughout the year. They can't just finish drives, right? They make mistakes, and they just been inefficient when it comes to their offense. And I feel like Brewster, I don't necessarily think they've been super efficient either on their offensive side, but I feel like their defense has been very good, and I feel like their size is what helps them the most in this case. And I feel like it's going to be one of the fastest games ever played when it comes to what Brewster should be trying to do is own the clock and just run the ball. And they have ability to throw, but I feel like their defense is going to try to just give their offense a lot more, really a lot more options or a lot more time to just get back on the field and score some points. So I'm going to go with Brewster here.
Next up, we have Somers 4-0 at John Jay Cross River, who's 1-3. Somers won 49-12 versus Fox Lane. John Jay Cross River lost 49-14 at Yorktown. Cross River is trying to break a 2-game losing streak, but now going up against this Somers team, Mars. And listen, Cross River offensively, they're pretty solid. They're 7 points scored. They can pass the ball with Curry, their young quarterback who had 2 passing touchdowns. Patrick Ryan, who's been really strong for them. Problem is offensive line wise, right? Again, running the football, they got to be creative. They got to use their speed. They got to use the short passing game as kind of an extension of the run. But they're at a major size advantage, size disadvantage versus Somers. And a bigger problem is defensively. They're last in points allowed in A. They gave up 500 yards last week. And Somers, Mars, we've talked about them starting off slow the last couple weeks. Not last week. Last week they came out guns blazing. Quarterback Iglesias had 5 total touchdowns last week and was 12 of 13 passing. And that trio of quarterback Iglesias, running back Kelly, wide receiver Palazzolo, Mars, they've accounted for 13 of the 15 touchdowns scored the last 3 games. This offensive line is one of the best in the A and AA schools. They rotate around, I think, 10 guys. I'm not sure John Jay Cross River, unless they get, they have to get super aggressive defensively and they have to generate negative plays. And, they're going to have to really bring it if they're going to try to slow down this offense at all. I don't think it happens. I'm going to go with Somers. Defensively, they're probably not as, Somers' defense is probably not as dominant as we're used to seeing over years past. But they're going to have a size advantage, and I think put John Jay behind the chains, and they're going to create some turnovers. I'm going Somers.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Somers. I feel like they, and I mentioned this just previously, but Somers and Rye are the top teams in my opinion, and I feel like it's because their offense has been really just been efficient, and they've been scoring at will, and they just seem like they can't be stopped. Right, defensively they've given up some points, but I just don't think that John Jay has the size that can match with this offensive line because, as you mentioned, not only are they big, but they're rotating a lot of guys in, so they're staying like energized right throughout the game. And if Somers starts out the way they did last week, then I think this game will be close to done by halftime. Right?
Yeah.
I just feel like Somers has to realize that yes, you are one of the best teams in A, but you can't just slow up in the first half. You got to just be consistent. So Somers, I feel like, is going to win this game.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. We have league matchup Mahopac 3-1 at Lakeland, who's 1-3. Mahopac won 14-13 versus Brewster. Lakeland won 28-13 against at rival Panis. And this game again to me, I don't want to call things. I don't know how often Lakeland has beaten Mahopac historically. Tried to look up the numbers, didn't get a chance to. But Mahopac usually, again, for a long time has been in a AA school and then has dropped down to A in most recent years, the last, 4 years now, down to A. And I think in these kind of games is where you see the size advantage for Mahopac. And that's what I think. Now, they lost their running back in Maskell. I don't know how bad the injury is. If anyone knows, in chat, let me know because he is so important for their offense. He is their best offensive weapon. And so him missing time changes this offense. But the O-line is still dominant, right? This O-line is one of the best in the class because they are bigger than most of the offensive line groups. And it shows that they can move people. And so even without Maskell, they could still run the ball, I think, against this Lakeland defense with Clifford. And then taking some shots with their quarterback, Devushaj. And I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but I'm terrible with names. But the young man had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 really nice thrown touchdown passes to Ashandi, their receiver last week, including the game-winning one. So to me, I think they have a size advantage. They're going to use that size advantage. Defensively, they were very strong in the second half. Lakeland, to me, they're not out of it, but they have to pull off these kind of upsets at home versus Mahopac to keep their playoff hopes alive. It's going to have to be with guys like Policastro, who had 148 yards rushing, but they're going to have to make some plays in the passing game because they're at a major size disadvantage. Can they do that without turning the ball over? I'm not sure they can. Defensively, I like guys like Nick Oliva and Nick Ferrante, but I just think Mahopac is too big, too strong. Guys like Varley is probably going to take over games like this. I'm going Mahopac.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Mahopac. I feel like their offensive line play has just been really good, and I feel like they've been owning the trenches up front. That's what's really been keeping Mahopac in games against games like Somers that have been, obviously a team that's that good. Like the first half is all about Somers kind of slowing up, and Mahopac's offensive line really just keeping the game in their way, right? And they kind of can impose their will. And I agree with you that that Masco going down could be bad depending on how bad the injury is. But I think it's more just about the offensive line just opening up holes. But I'm going to go with Mapack here. I just don't know if Lakeland has enough to really compete with the size of this line and how efficient they've been. They just gotta, like you said, they gotta make some big plays. Like they have to pull off some like big time yardage plays. They really get the momentum on their side. They're playing at home, and I'm not really sure when the last time Lakeland had beat Mapack. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Mapack here.
Yeah. All right. Let's do our game of the week, and then we'll go to AA, and then we'll wrap the show up. And that's Eastchester, who's 3-1 at Harrison, who's 3-1. Really, really important game. Both these teams, vying for, I think the winner here really gives them a huge opportunity to lock in the number 2 spot and compete for the number 1 spot, obviously, versus Rye. But the winner here, I think they're in really good standing to get a top 2 spot in the league. So this is a major game. Historically, Harrison is 8-5 versus Eastchester. They have won 6 straight in this matchup. And this was a very close game last year. It was 7-0. Right, that Harrison won. But let's start with Eastchester, Mars. They won 20-3 versus Clarkstown South. Harrison won 7-0 at Clarkstown North. But when I look at Eastchester, this is a team that a lot of people going in, including, well, myself, I thought they had something, but I wasn't sure how much they had. And Eastchester has been a real nice surprise. Now, offensively, they're tied for 9th in points scored. This is not a extremely high-powered offense. At times, it's been very mixed. And what has hurt this offense has been turnovers. They like to start with the run. They have a couple backs who are very important in their run game, and Chiffon, who was a beast last week, had 100 yards and a rushing touchdown, and really running through running through defenders. And Martucci, who is another guy who people should get to know because he's an explosive guy. Chiffon is more the power guy. Martucci is more of the elusive speed guy. And they're a nice tandem running the ball. And they have a quarterback who, one of my favorite players is their quarterback and linebacker, Burnbridge, who starts both ways, but he got dinged up last week. Don't know his status. So quarterback Maltese, who's a smaller, more athletic quarterback, comes in, does change the offense. He had a rushing touchdown. He's more athletic. He's faster, but he's not as big and imposing as their other quarterback. So again, does that take away some of their play action game to guys like Mannion and Provenzale, which is very important to this offense? We're going to see. I mean, that's one of my big keys is the play action game. So can they work that? Harrison, at times, they're a strong defense. We'll get to them soon. But they've given big pass plays. And so can you work the play action to attack an aggressive defense that sometimes in the secondary can be a little too aggressive or a little too lax and generate these big plays? Defensively, Mars, this is the number 2 defense in points allowed. This group really can get after it. And, at times they've given up the big play because they've over-pursued or given up some of these big pass plays as well. But they had 4 sacks last week, under 200 yards total, and they can force turnovers. Telesco has been a menace, and guys like Chiafone and Burnbridge and other guys who can make plays for you. Eastchester has been impressive, Mars, to watch. My big key is obviously stopping the run. They have to be aware of the option, especially one guy, in my opinion, on offense, Dante Lanza. That's where Eastchester's got to focus their attention on, is stopping that option. Force Harrison to do something they're not, I wouldn't say good at, but haven't been efficient at, and that is passing the ball. Thoughts on Eastchester, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like their defense has been top notch, and I've been very impressed the way they played. Very aggressive, forcing turnovers. They just have to now, really lock down this option offense, right? And I feel like the key to that is playing discipline and really forcing negative plays to then put Harrison in an onus, and I feel like that's going to be the key for Eastchester here.
And now we will move to Harrison, Mars. They're also tied for 9th. It's funny. The two teams playing each other, they're both tied for 9th in points scored in A. Running back Krupe is out. We know this. We talked about this previously. So important for this offense. But Harrison trying to find ways to win without him. And so offensively, they're still trying to figure things out. You can tell. And it all starts with running the football. And to me, the next guy, next star on the list is Dante Lanza. He'll line up at running back. You'll throw it to him out in the slot. He'll line up at quarterback, run the option for you, do counters, do stuff like that. But he is their big play guy, and so important for this offense with Krupe out to generate big plays. He is so important. But who is the next guy? who's going to make that? Is that a guy like Olsey, who we've seen make some plays in the running game? Is it a guy like their fullback in Marisi, who we know him as a stud at linebacker, but can he make plays running the football? And their quarterback in Badner. They need guys to step up. The offense, too many mistakes last week. Scored 1 touchdown. I don't think 1 touchdown does it enough in this game. So they need guys who can step up. This offensive line needs to step up. Defensively, again, this is a very strong defense. Their front seven needs to dominate in the run game. They swarm very well. They tackle well. But this secondary has to be disciplined to prevent giving up big plays. Arn Damage is a stud at the defensive line spot, but he's not alone. These linebackers, in Marisi and Olsey, and in the secondary, they can come up and hit you, and guys like Dante Lanza. This is a defense that can really get after you, and they're going to have to impose their will in this game, Mars, to keep things close. Thoughts on Harrison, Mars?
Yeah, I kind of look at both sides for both Harrison and Eastchester, and their defenses have been great. And I feel like, as much as it sounds cliche, but I feel like it's going to be the battle of the defenses. And whichever defense can really be more stout and be more efficient, then I feel like that team's going to win. Right? I just feel like right now it's like they both are similar. They're very close to each other in how they play. They're both aggressive. They both have this grittiness to them. And I feel like that this is almost like one of those perfect matchups. And it's almost like they are identical, right? And I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see how this game unfolds.
Yeah. And so I wanted to do a little film. I wanted to talk about, Eastchester's rush offense and this Harrison rush defense, and show probably the biggest matchup is that, in my opinion. So let me pull up the film. There we go. I think you guys can see it.
Yep.
Perfect. Yep. So the big thing to me, and I'm going to start with Eastchester, is running the ball. And they're going to try to out-leverage you by using formations, by using some misdirection with their 2 back sets. And, they'll come out and they want to put Chiffone and Martucci in the backfield at the same time. It puts a lot of pressure on your defense. And you can see here, right? You got Chiffone here at the tailback spot. You have Martucci here at the fullback spot. And this is overloading, right? They have a tight end, they have a wing, and a flanker. They're trying to outflank this defense. And you can see the defense doesn't have anybody like in the wing space, right? They're playing a little bit off. So it's giving them an advantage. They're pulling a couple guys in that direction. And they want to give their stud backs who run hard an opportunity to make guys miss and squeeze and find lanes. And you can see that. They get a seal here, a seal here. There's a lot of guys in this area. But watch Chiffone. He does a really good job of finding little lanes. Look at him juke there. He runs hard. He can break tackles. Look at him. There's 2 broken. There's a third one. Now look at him drive his feet there, setting up what's going to be a touchdown. I mean, if you look at from the play earlier, there's a lot of people in this crowd. So how does he find the space? He does a really good job of squeezing through holes. Look at him squeeze there. Look at the power he shows driving his feet and getting a huge first down, setting up a touchdown. Now, Chiffone is one of the big guys, but Martucci is another one that people need to keep aware of. He's elusive. He's fast. And here we go. Another 2-back system. This time, Martucci's the tailback. Chiffone is the fullback. And now they're going to give you a little bit of misdirection. So they'll try to hit you with some overload stuff. They'll try to give you a misdirection. And so they'll have Chiffone, and they're the 2 highlighted right there. You're going to have Chiffone go one way, Martucci go the other. And he's going to replace the guard and tackle right here. Right? So, but he's going to say, hey, if the linebackers are looking at him, right, they're going to be stepping in this direction. Right? And if their eyes aren't on these linemen, they won't see that pull. They're looking at Martucci, he's going this. They want to try to give you some cross-flow action. So that's what they do right there. Look at the line right here. Does a good job down blocking, getting some movement. And now Martucci sees an opening to the outside. He probably could have kept this in, but he's trying to bounce it out. And you can see the speed. Watch the speed and elusiveness, making people miss. Breaks the tackles. Look at the wide receivers blocking down. I love that. Fighting leads to that touchdown, which put the game away. They run a two running back system that has been very impressive in Chiffone and Martucci. And they'll try to out-leverage you using formations, using misdirection. Then we go to Harrison. And defensively, all eyes go on this guy right here. And they got a bunch of guys who could be big-time players for them, but Arden leads the way on that defensive line. He'll line up at D-tackle, he'll line up at defensive end, and he's been an absolute menace this year. And if you try to run at him, it's very difficult. I saw teams try to double-team him, teams try to trap him, don't have a lot of success. And here's an example. Right? They're going to say, okay, he's very aggressive. We're going to try to trap and run underneath him. We'll get a bunch of double teams up to backers here, get the line movement, and then run underneath. Problem is he's so big and strong. Look at him squeeze down the hole. Again, the lineman got his head to the inside, but because he's so powerful, it's hard to kick him out of the hole. Look at him use his hands right here and just buries him. One-on-one tackle for a loss. I mean, the dude is an absolute stud. So teams say, okay, we see this on tape. So obviously trying to run underneath them is not great. So what can we do? Well, we can run around him, right? He's a big guy. He's not that fast. We can run a sweep here. We go empty. We run the sweep. The problem is defense can really swarm to the football. You're going to see they're going to run a jet sweep here. Watch that guy right there, Dante Lanza. Watch these linebackers. Look at Arden running down the line. But you get a block here, you get a steal here, and now it's trying to get a one-on-one with the safety. But Dante can tackle in open space. I actually really like him at the safety spot. Look at him fly up here. Bang. Fumble. Look at Arden hustling. Forces a turnover. Last but not least, okay, we don't want to run underneath them. We try to run outside of them, but they show a lot of team speed. We'll just run away from them, right? Again, similar, going spread, trying to empty the box. They're going to run some power read with this, motion guy and the quarterback. And that was Arden highlighted right there. But I love the hustle, right? Things look open for initially, but watch this defense swarm. Look at them using their hands. Look at them driving to the football. Look at all the bodies there. Again, Harrison defends the run very well. And so Eastchester, they're really going to try to have to out-leverage them using formations and the play-action game if they're going to try to win it. All right, Mars, who do you got winning and why?
I mean, this is definitely one of the toughest games to pick, I think, in this entire week. Mainly because these teams are nearly identical, and I feel like they both play the same way. They both have aggressiveness on the defensive side, and I feel like they are obviously vying for that number 2 spot on that B league in Class A. And I feel like this is really tough. And usually, what I always like to think of is the home team gets the advantage, and I'm also going to go with Harrison for that reason. I feel like Harrison, as much as they're obviously there's not as much depth on this team compared to what Eastchester has, but I feel like they kind of have an advantage when it comes to their offensive schemes, being able to try to really force the defense to play disciplined against them. And I feel like what helps in that case is that they have a lot of big bodies up front and they can move people around. But I feel like if they can get ahead of the sticks and just kind of control this time possession, it's going to help them a lot. I mean, it's going to be really tough against Eastchester's defense, but I feel like their defense as well has been very good at forcing turnovers, playing aggressive, and they just have a lot of playmakers that really are difficult to stop. So I'm going to go with Harrison this game. I was honestly very in between on this one, but I'm going to go with Harrison as the home team.
I am very in between. Both teams dealing with injuries. Both teams playing very strong defense. I do like Eastchester's ability to hit big plays in the passing game more than Harrison right now. But in these kind of games, this is where the stars come to play, Mars, right? And Eastchester's a little younger than Harrison, and these are the moments where guys like Arden Balidamaj and Dante Lanza and some of these veterans at Harrison who went to the section title game last year, these are these kind of moments that they play at a high level. And I think Harrison is going to win. This is going to be a low-scoring, physical, beat you up type of game. And with that, I'm going to give the advantage to the home team. I'm going Harrison. All right, Mars, our final leg of the race. And that is AA. And so let's dive into it. First up, another really good matchup. We have AA, Mamaroneck 3-1 at Arlington, who is 2-2. Mamaroneck won 34-33 at Carmel, one of the biggest games of the year last week. Arlington won 28-21 at rival John Jay's Fishkill. They have won 2 straight, Mars. Here comes Arlington back. And when I look at this game again, offensively for Arlington, they've definitely played better. They've run the ball better with their quarterback in Rancart, with their running back Russo. And boy, did their playmaker and Tuttle step up. Kick return touchdown, receiving touchdown. He also had 2 INTs. Big-time playmaker. Defensively, they forced turnovers. The problem is Mamaroneck, I think, is on a roll. And, they were extremely impressive winning on the road. Their offense really found something. They had over 400 yards. Quarterback Jacobson was tremendous. This offensive line, I thought, played a really, really big game against a tough Carmel front, and they held up very well. And guys like Bone, Davidson, Friedman all made plays. Defensively, this is the number 6 defense in points allowed. And listen, their third quarter was brutal, but they made plays in the first half and the fourth quarter to give them a chance to win. And I think Mamaroneck does that again on the road. I'm going to go with Mamaroneck.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Mamaroneck. I feel like they kind of came into themselves this past week against Carmel. They showed out. They played in a tough environment. They won at the end, and good teams find a way to win. And I feel like Mamaroneck is a really good team. Their offense has started to really progress, and I feel like defensively they obviously have been very solid. I mean, they've struggled at times. They need to really prevent the big plays, but I feel like they're going to win this game. As much as Arlington has made a comeback, they still have struggles, right? I feel like offensively they are one of the lower. They're 14 out of 15 in points scored, and I feel like they need to really find their way, right, in what they want to do for offensively. And I feel like Mamaroneck's defense is good enough to really prevent really Arlington to really make a lot of those big plays. So I'm going to go with Mamaroneck here.
Yeah, another big game. Yonkers Forest 2-1 at Mount Vernon, who's 2-2. And listen, Mount Vernon offensively, they've scored 22 plus points in 3 straight. Running back Terry has been, he was a killer last week. Real fun player to watch. Had 264 yards. And quarterback White has made some plays these last couple weeks. Now, defensively, they've been solid as well. They've allowed 14 points total the last 2 weeks, and they've been forcing turnovers. But Yonkers Forest defensively, they're number 4 in points allowed. Now, they gave up a lot of rush yards last week, which does make me nervous. But I do think this offense, who was disappointing, had 3 turnovers, didn't score a lot of points with quarterback Fields and the weapons that he has. I think they rebound, and this might, I think there's a bunch of people that think that Mount Vernon is going to win this. I think Yonkers Forest surprises them, and they win this one on the road with a bounce-back performance by their offense.
I'm going to go with Mount Vernon.
You're one of them.
The trend. Yeah, maybe I'm going to follow the trend of everybody else, but I
think Blowhut and Mars are on Mount Vernon.
I think Mount Vernon has really been a little bit more efficient than Yonkers Forest, especially with their defensive side. 14 points total the last 2 weeks. They've been forcing turnovers. They have been offensively have been scoring 22 plus in 3 straight games. I mean, that's great, and I feel like they have the momentum on their side. Yonkers Forest had a tough one. They lost to Ossining, but I feel like Mount Vernon being at home is going to have the advantage. It's going to be a really close game. I'm going to go Mount Vernon.
Next up, we have a double-A matchup. We have Ketchum 2-1 at East Ramapo, who's 1-2. Ketchum was off last week, so they're coming off a bye. East Ramapo won 20-9 at Yonkers Brave for their first victory. This one's a tough one, Mars, because, listen, it's tough for high school teams to come off a bye. This ain't the NFL. You mentioned it earlier in the year of picking a game where it's like, you're in a routine, you play a game, it gets you going to the next week. When you come off a bye, you didn't have that game speed that previous week. So how quick do you knock off the rust? Ketchum's offense has been very impressive. They're number 2 in points scored with their quarterback in Fitzsimmons, Faye, Turner. Defensively, they can force some turnovers, but they have given up some big plays. And when I look at East Ramapo, they had a nice bounce-back victory last week. Defensively, they played pretty strong. Anthony Mack has been a force the last 2 weeks. Before the season started, March, I said East Ramapo was going to compete for a top 2 spot. If they're going to do that, they need to win this game. I'm going to go with East Ramapo. They do have to stop the turnovers on offense, because if they don't, they're going to lose this game, because they showed me, Bill, that they can run the ball. They're very athletic, but they've turned the ball over way too much. I'm going out on a limb. I think at home, East Ramapo wins. They score enough. I think defense is going to keep Ketchum's offense at bay.
You see, I think Ketchum has that same belief as well. They need to win this game to try to secure one of those spots, and I'm going to go with Ketchum. I know that usually, I think I was only made the case last week about a team that's on bye.
Yes.
But I feel like at the same time, you do actually have some more extra time to develop your players, develop your younger guys.
Are you double speaking now?
Rotate. But I just feel like for this case, I feel like Ketchum is going to win this game. I feel like their offense has been stout, their defense has been okay, but I feel like just because of fact that they've been playing well, and they just have the ability to score on will at times. I just think Ketchum's going to have the advantage, just because East Rampo has to limit the mistakes, right? If they limit those turnovers, then it's a different game. But they have a lot of turnovers, 3 last week. So I feel like it's going to be Ketchum winning this week.
Next up, Yonkers Brave 2-2 at Ossining. That's 2-1. Yonkers Brave lost 20-9 versus East Rampo. They've lost 2 straight, trying to get off their streak. Ossining won 18-6 at Yonkers Forest. And again, Yonkers Brave, they're predicated on running the ball. And, they've been pretty consistent offensively and defensively. Over the last 2 weeks, their offense has hit a bit of a roadblock. Now, defensively, they forced turnovers. But when I look at Ossining, Mars, last week they had 270 yards rushing. And guys like Ramirez who had 2 touchdowns, Frith, who made plays for them on the offensive side. I think they're going to find success running the football against this Yonkers Brave. As long as they protect the ball, is going to be huge, because that's what Yonkers Brave does well. But defensively, Ossining is the number 1 defense in AA, Mars. They forced 7 turnovers over the last 2 weeks. Guys like Castellon, Moore up front, and then McCormick, Frith, and Pine in the back end making defensive turnovers. I'm going to go with Ossining. They've been very impressive defensively.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ossining as well. I feel like defense in this case is going to do wonders, because Ossining's play, it really complements each other. Like the way the defense is being very aggressive, it gets their offense back on the field, and then the fact that they can just run the ball really well, right? It really does control the time of possession. I feel like Ossining's going to win this game. They have been on a roll, especially with their rush offense. Defense has been great. I'm going to go with Ossining.
Next up, we have Scarsdale 3-0 at New Rochelle, who's 0-4. Listen, Scarsdale, one of the big surprises. I give them their flowers right now. They are one of the elite teams in AA. They won 35-14 at Suffern. Impressive victories at Mamaroneck and at Suffern on the road, Mars. That is not easy to do. New Rochelle lost 49-12 versus North Rockland. And listen, New Rochelle offensively, they've struggled to score points on a consistent basis. Fernan and Maple are big playmakers for them. But this is not the same New Rochelle defense that we've seen for years. And they're going up against an offense that has run the option very well. Gilligan has been tremendous. He is not talked about a lot, but that young man at the fullback spot, 3 touchdowns last week, has been a force, and the number 1 primary guy. And then they have Ebner Borst at the quarterback spot, done a good job orchestrating. But they got the Krupkin, Brennan at those tailback spots, or the slotted wing spots, if you want to call it that, and then Vibert in the pass game. This is a gritty offensive line. They're not very big, but they execute very well, and this rush attack controls the game. It also helps when you have the number 2 defense. They had a shutout in the second half last week against a tough Suffern offense. This has been a very impressive team, Mars. I think it continues. Scarsdale is going to win this game, get 4 wins. I don't remember the last time they started off 4-0.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Scarsdale, and I feel like, when was the last time you would say that Scarsdale has a better record than New Rochelle? I mean, how often do you really hear that? Especially back in the days when we were playing in AA. But I feel like New Rochelle has just been struggling when it comes to their offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, and I feel like Scarsdale has just been the opposite. Defensively, they've been top notch. They've been shutting out teams in the second half. They've no more than 14 points allowed in per game this season, and their offense have just been scoring at will, and they just control the pace of games. And I feel like the only way to really slow down their offense is to play disciplined. I just feel like Scarsdale has been really good at just owning that line of scrimmage. So I'm going to go with Scarsdale.
Next up before our last game of the week, and that is Suffern 1-3 at John Jay's Fishkill, who's 0-4. Suffern lost 35-14 versus Scarsdale. They have lost 2 straight. John Jay is still looking for their first victory. They lost 28-21 versus Arlington. And listen, this is 2 teams struggling in some form. I mean, Suffern defensively, Mars, they've allowed 3 30-plus point games this year. They have to be better defensively. There's without question. Now, when you look at John Jay, offensively, turnovers have been killer. They had 3 INTs last week. 1 was for a touchdown, right? And that's what changed momentum in that game. So, to me, 2 teams trying to figure things out. But I am going to go with Suffern. Offensively, Jeff Joseph has still been really strong. 3 straight 100-yard games. You got receivers like Mitchell and Toronto who can make big plays for you, and their quarterback Palumbo. Can they finish drives for this offense? But defensively, I think they do play better. They have not been good. They need to be better if they want to compete defensively. For John Jay, there's just too many mistakes. Defensively, they weren't that bad, but 2 big plays they gave up, again, in the passing game, which Suffern can take advantage of. I think Suffern wins.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think Suffern's gonna win this game. John Jay's been making way too many mistakes. Suffern has a lot of playmakers that obviously can score at will if they need to, and they can really just make big plays. John Jay hasn't proven that they could stop that from happening, and I just feel like Suffern has the advantage there. I'm gonna go Suffern.
All right, our final game of the week, and that is Carmel, who's 2-1 at North Rockland, who is 2-2. Historically, Carmel's 8-5 versus North Rockland. They have won 7 straight in this matchup. Last year was a very strong game. They won 14-6. It was a defensive game. But when you look at Carmel, Mars, they lost 34-33 versus Mamaroneck. North Rockland won 49-12 at New Rochelle. And focusing in on Carmel first, it took a lot to beat them, right? Mamaroneck had to do a hook and ladder. There was, Carmel fumbled the ball on 4th down to seal the game and put it away. They dropped an INT to seal the game to put it away. And looking back, the last time they lost 2 games, 2-game losing streak, 2014. So it's hard to beat this team more than once. And offensively, they're still the number 1 offense in AA. They've scored 30-plus points in all 3 games. It starts with running the ball, but their pass attack, which I want to show on film has been pretty impressive. They'll hit you with the quick game, but what I like is they really do a good job of out-leveraging you, whether that's overloading zones or creating matchups where they can take advantage of. And their quarterback in McGorry, who had 3 touchdowns, he's been very impressive. And you got some of these weapons like White, Galbraith, who can make plays for you. Obviously, we know about Werlu. He had over 100 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. He is dynamic. He's, in my opinion, the best back in Section 1. But when you have that mix of pass attack and rush attack, and this offensive line has been pretty solid, they are tough to slow down, and that's going to be a handful for North Rockland. Defensively, listen, they've given up 21 or more points in each game, and there's been 2 30-point games that they've given up. They have to, they have to play better defensively. Way too many big plays given up. And they can generate pressure. They got some good size and speed up front, guys like Mercer, Hibbert, Galbraith, Kemba, Casal. They got some guys, but they've given up way too many big plays. And they have a solid corner in White, who I saw make some plays last week, but whether it's communication-wise, whether it's getting beat deep, they have to do a better job of keeping plays in front of them because North Rockland has a lot of speed, and that's what they're going to want to take advantage of. They want to keep things, in my keys defensively for Carmel, keep things tackle to tackle. As for North Rockland, Mars, and then I'll let you speak on both. Their offense has been pretty strong. Yeah, there's the number 3 offense in points scored now from the last time we spoke about them. Lots of motion in this offense, and they're trying to mess with defenders' eyes, trying to get you looking in one direction when you're really supposed to be focusing in on this key, right? They're trying to mess around with you. And when they get messed around with, you get hesitant. And that's what they want to take advantage of. Obviously, their stud running back in Johnson is a key factor in this. He's 7 total touchdowns in the last 3 games. 2 of the last 3 games, he's gone over 100 yards total. Might have been all 3 games, but he is tremendous running the ball. They'll throw it to him. He is the vital number 1 guy. But what has given me more hope about this offense, and you've seen it in the stats, is their quarterback in Perini. He has over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns with one INT. Remember, North Rockland has struggled with turnovers, but 1 INT in the last 2 games. And you're seeing this offense become way more explosive, throwing to guys like Jaslow, Gariful Hevner, Prisco. So that's a much more. That's what makes this game much more interesting. Is North Rockland showing some more dynamic features in their offense, and that's because they could throw the ball. Defensively, this is number 3 defense in AA. They forced 5 turnovers so far this season. Obviously, stopping the run is going to be the big thing with guys like Prisco. You've seen guys like Gariful Hevner and King St. Fleur and Javon Lawrence and Kubelzvac make plays defensively. But again, Carmel likes to out-leverage you. Line up correctly on these shifts. Know where your reads are. And they're going to have to load up these boxes and at times play man coverage on some of these stud guys. But if you go into zone coverage, if you're going into man coverage, they're going to try to overload you to his side. Communication is going to be huge. Thoughts, Mars? And then I'll show a little film and then we'll do pick and we're done.
Yeah, I feel like this is actually a great matchup between 2 teams, and I feel like Carmel's offense has been stout, scoring on high levels, but their defense has definitely struggled. I feel like they've really just given up. You said 21 points per game. That's a lot.
21 plus.
Section 1.
So they've had 2 30-point games they've given up.
Yeah, so 21 plus games. it's kind of that's a lot, man, in high school football. And North Rockland has just been impressive. They've been getting better. It feels like every week they've just been improving, both offensively and defensively. They've just been showing a lot more efficiency, less turnovers, less mistakes, and I feel like that's been making Mount Vernon, not Mount Vernon, North Rockland, way more impressive as time goes on. So I'm actually really interested in this game. This is kind of feels like the North Rockland of old to a certain extent in the way that they've been playing. So really interesting.
Yeah, let's quickly go over some film, and I wanted to show both these pass attacks because we've talked about Waterloo in this impressive offense. Let's talk about the pass attack. And Carmel does a really good job, again, like I mentioned, using leverage to their advantage, using matchups to their advantage. And I just wanted to show this back view because it was a real good clip that I could get from the quarterback perspective, and it kind of shows you kind of the leverage here. They actually are 2-by-2. You see two receivers to the right, two receivers to the left, but they're way off the screen, and they did this on purpose. Get wide because the matchup they're trying to create is getting W up the middle of the field. They want to send them on a go route out of the backfield. And you could see, you got two defenders over here to the right. You got a safety that's really deep, but he's got to play far off on the outside of that logo. And the question is, who's going to cover you W with all this wide open space between the two safeties? And that's the matchup they're trying to create. And you can see, as the ball gets snapped, who's playing him? Are they playing man here? Is he going to go underneath? Is a linebacker going to be on him? But this is his first read. And really good job by the O-line. Look at them standing up strong, Mars. This is a long route. Right, they have to have W split those two defenders, and you can see it's hard to stop him. He's super fast. If you don't, again, it looks like they're kind of caught in between on who's going to cover him as this play develops. But this is the read right here. It's a long route, but the quarterback has to stand in the pocket. And look at this offensive line. They do a really good job opening up to him. He gets behind both of them using his speed, splits the safety, and it's see you later. I mean, the quarterback even knows. He doesn't even have to. He's doing handshakes with the lineman because he knows that no one's catching W. So again, creating that matchup, W on a safety, W on a linebacker, is tough to beat. What also Carmel will do is try to out-leverage you. And you're going to see they got three receivers to the left, one to the right, and they move the running back there. Right, so they're 3-by-1, and they're going to test, if you're running zone coverage, how well you communicate, how well you're going to cover some of these overload routes, and put someone in a tough spot, one defender in a tough spot, or two defenders. And they got two defenders to the right on this solo guy. So they got 3 for 3. But what Carmel does is they're going to send out the running back into the flats. And so now the question is going to be, you're going to see two in-breaking routes from these outside guys. You're going to see a wheel route from this number 3 receiver and the running back running to the flats with the fourth one. And if you only got 3 defenders and this linebacker doesn't help in some sort of way taking away one of these routes, someone's going to get open. And you're going to see they're going to put this corner and this safety in conflict. As the route develop, this is the big moment right here. Quarterback's already throwing. He knows, again, by watching film, coach is talking to him, that if this corner has his shoulders turned going with this in-breaking route, this guy's going to be open because look at the flat defender, right? He's not running with the wheel. He's kind of sitting in between to defend this out. That means this wheel is wide open. And that's where they're going. He's already cocked, ready to go. That's good film work, good coaching. They know that if that corner turns his shoulders breaking in, that wheel's going to be open. He doesn't wait. Delivers it, and it's sayonara. Then I want to go to North Rockland and look at their offense. And obviously everything starts with their running back in Jaquan Johnson, but they love using motion to try to mess with linebackers, mess with defenders' eyes. And you're going to see they're going to motion this guy behind the quarterback, and they're going to run in the opposite direction. They're going to pull a guard. They're going to pull this H back. And again, they're just trying to mess with defenders' eyes. They're going to try to get him stepping in the wrong direction. And you can see the linebacker's probably coming on a blitz, but the motion is drawing his attention this way. Right? He's stepping this way. And that's exactly what North Rockland wants because they're countering back. Right? And you're taking a linebacker a bit out of the play here. There he is highlighted. Look at the cut inside. And again, trying to make up for it by undercutting. But Jaquan Johnson's fast. You get a seal here, he hits the hole hard. So if you don't catch him early, you don't take the proper angle, it's sayonara. Look at these blocks down the field. This looked easy because that misdirection, getting people's eyes looking the wrong way. But what has impressed me about North Rockland and why I do like their chances here, and this could be an interesting game, is the passing game. Here you got Jaquan Johnson in the backfield. Look at the condensed formation. Another thing that North Rockland likes to do is hide receivers. Have them run routes out of the backfield or behind. Again, this is an H-back. You've seen this the last couple years. And you're going to see play action. They're going to fake it to Jaquan Johnson. They're going to get 2 in-breaking routes, and they're going to sneak this guy up the sideline, hit him behind these other routes. And you're going to see it open up. Look at these guys. Turn their shoulders, corners. And now no one's covering this guy, leaving wide open. Quarterback sees that right away. Delivers the ball, doesn't float it, leads to a long touchdown. And again, North Rockland's going to have to use the run game. They're going to have to get to the edge, but they're going to have to use play action, Mars, if they're going to have a chance to win this one. All right, Mars, last pick of the day. Game of the week for AA. Who wins Carmel at North Rockland and why?
Yeah, see, this was also a really tough game for me, mainly because, I picked against Carmel once before, and they steamrolled past Suffer, and I got memed on for it. And their offense has been impressive. I mean, they just by scheme and coaching, they just have been hitting everything you need to hit. Defensively, it's kind of been a little bit of the opposite. Not saying because they're not the worst defense, but they've struggled to really limit games. It's like, yes, they're giving up so many points. They're just outscoring their opponents by even more, which is why they're winning. And the question is going to be about what happens when their offense doesn't have a top-level game. Like, what happens when they meet a defense that is a very good defense? And North Rockland seems like they could be one of those opponents where that has a very good team, offense and defensively. And offensively, I don't really have any question. Like, I know that they're going to score points. It's just about how much points are they going to score. And defensively, it's like, can you limit the mistakes? Can you limit the big plays against Carmel and force them to have to drive down the field and score points rather than having to have these big time plays that they burst to get 60-yard touchdown passes or whatever it may be. And that's going to be the big question for me. And I'm maybe I'll get memed on, but I'm gonna go with North Rockland. I think North Rockland at home, Carmel's got to drive a good amount of time to get there, and I feel like defense is gonna really be a main factor for me. As much as Carmel's offenses will score points, I know they will, but North Rockland is going to use their defensive ability to try to limit those big plays. And I just think that they're going to try to drain down the clock. As much as their passing ability has been really good, their rush offense has been very impressive. And I feel like they're going to try to keep it out of Carmel's hands as much as possible and just own the time possession. I'm going to go with North Rockland.
I haven't seen a defense really slow down Carmel. I haven't, not yet. So I know Carmel's going to move the ball. Interested to see how North Rockland plays Carmel defensively. The concern is W. I mean, people have not slowed him down, and this pass attack has continued to improve. And if Carmel doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to score points. You make up very good point. Is Carmel's defense. They've given up a lot of points. But at stretches, they have created negative plays. They have created turnovers. And that's the interesting part to me. If Carmel can get ahead, right, and force North Rockland to, again, they want to show that balance between running the ball and throwing it. But if North Rockland has to get to a pure passing team, that's an advantage for Carmel. It's an advantage for Carmel. Now, again, Carmel's got to keep this a tackle-to-tackle game. Force North Rockland to try to win in between the tackles because they have a lot of speed. And because of that, I haven't seen people slow down Carmel, and because Carmel has not lost 2 straight in 10 years. I am going to go with Carmel. I think Carmel's going to win this game. It's going to be another high-scoring game. North Rockland is going to put up some points. But if Carmel can protect the ball, they're going to win this game. All right, that is our show, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I know it was a nice long one. We talked about standings. We talked about all the games. We talked about games of the week. So appreciate you guys as always. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe to help support the channel. And think about joining our Patreon. Our Patreon members, are giving donations to us, which we are greatly appreciative. Helps us continue to grow. And we'd like to give some added benefits for those people. So consider doing that and helping out the group. I see the poll ended, Frank, at 62%. Mars. It was 50. It was like 55-45 for a while, but people are joining in on our train. So thank you guys, as always, for watching and supporting the show. enjoy the games this weekend. We'll see you all very soon.